Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. This week's presentation features expert Matthew Binko, Manager of Training at Phoenix Data Systems. Matthew will guide HTM and HFM professionals in their search for higher quality data using a CMMS. From initial implementation to maintaining data through the lifecycle of a database, attendees will gain insight into practical workflows that provide better and more consistent data for their department. Matthew will discuss how to optimize preventative maintenance schedules at the proper record level, establishing model defaults, and streamlining the parts process, just to name a few. Webinar Wednesday would like to thank our sponsor, Phoenix Data Systems, creators of the AIMS CMMS software. With more than 35 years of CMMS healthcare experience, AIMS 3 offers the next generation of user-driven HTM software. Please visit GoAIMS for more information. A few announcements before we get started. MD Expo strives to provide healthcare technology management professionals with a unique, intimate, and rewarding conference second to none. Please join us in Las Vegas on November 1st and 2nd for the 2021 MD Expo. Please visit mdexposhow.com for details, registration, and our steps to a safe and clean meeting environment. While you're there, please make sure to sign up for our newsletter so you'll always have the most up-to-date information. Let's give one lucky attendee the opportunity to win a fun new Webinar Wednesday shirt by answering the following question. What are the Phoenix Data System booth numbers at the Fall MD Expo? You can find the answer by visiting our sponsor's website. Please use the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard to submit your answer. As always, today's webinar is eligible for one continuing education credit from the ACI. You can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. More details on this at the end of today's webinar. We'll hold a live Q&A throughout the presentation today. You can submit your questions at any time during the webinar by using the questions feature on the GoToWebinar dashboard. We'll get through as many attendee questions as time allows. As I mentioned earlier, our speaker today is Matthew Binko. Matthew, you may begin whenever you are ready.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody to my presentation. I'm excited about it because it's one of the more frequently asked questions I get as a consultant and as a trainer is that how do we fix our data? It seems like people are just stuck in everyday operation and doing their job, and they just can't seem to find the time, or in some instances don't know how, or maybe don't know the tricks of the trade on how to clean up their data. And I'm extremely excited for this presentation. Now, really quickly, who am I? My name is Matthew Binko. I've been in the healthcare industry for about 26 years. Currently, I am the manager of training for AIMS 3 here at Phoenix Data Systems. I'm a certified ServiceNow administrator. I've been a CMMS senior consultant for about 5 years with other softwares. And I was the director of security for 2 major hospitals in South Florida. And I've also got a number of years under my belt in the United States Army. Did 22 years, now I'm retired with my wife and having fun here in South Florida. So who are we? We are Phoenix Data Systems. We've been around since 1984. Today we're in about 3,000 hospitals in 20 countries. We're designed exclusively for the HTM industry, and obviously we can grow with your department. We continually enhance and support our software to meet your needs. And during this presentation, we will be utilizing the AIMS 3 software to show you any points that I may need to point out in a software system. So if you have any questions about who we are, who I am, wait to the end. I'm going to give you our contact information, and you can reach out through there, or like the host said, you could go through goames.com. Now, today we're going to talk about how to keep your data clean, how to clean your data, and we're going to do that in 3 distinct areas. The first area is going to be cleaning your data during conversions. That's probably the most important time to do it. And then once you have that cornerstone of clean data, we're going to talk about standardizing your data, maybe using automations or inheritance in your particular CMMS to ensure those standards that you're talking about. We're going to talk about developing SOPs and sticking to them. And then finally, we're going to be talking about maintaining that clean data, how to take bite-sized chunks to review that data. That way you are prepared for the future, which may be your next CMMS, which may be just an upgrade, right? Or regulation is always changing, and hopefully we can put you in a great position to be prepared for any changes that come your way. All right, so the first one I want to talk about, or how are we going to do it? How are we going to get all that done? We're going to build a cornerstone of quality data. Now, do you have to go in these 3 specific instances? No, you can mix them up. So if you happen to be at the standard operating procedures one, you can certainly start there, but the next time you convert, you're going to want to take care of that. But we're going to develop that cornerstone of quality data. We're going to talk about standing operating procedures and having your software help you enforce those SOPs. And then finally, we're going to do that constant review of data. And that's where you keep that clean data. So let's talk about the first one. We're going to talk about a cornerstone of quality data. And you always hear the term, you always go to war with the army that you have, not the army that you want. You know, here with information, it's not the same thing. You definitely want to use the information you want, not the information you have. And this is going to happen during conversions, because conversions don't happen overnight. Conversions can take many weeks, they can take many months. And during that time, it's the ideal time to work on that data. Now, a lot of people tell me, Matthew, I don't have 40 hours to work on it, and this, that, and the other thing. You got to take it in chunks. You got to take it in chunks. So what I mean by that is, in your software, most softwares will come with an export feature. You can do it by choosing the fields that you want, right? Or you can do it by doing a SQL statement. But eventually, you're going to get that information in an Excel file, whether it's CSV, whether it's a regular XLS file, doesn't matter. But it's during this time that you really want to line up your information, not only what the new software company needs as required fields, but your organization has required fields as well. So the very first thing I do whenever I get data like this from a customer is I decide what is required. And I'll look at it from our software standpoint first. So if we go to build a piece of equipment, there we go, in our system, you'll notice that most every software will have the red asterisk, right? And so, okay, tag number, got it. And then status, got it. Service department, got it, right? And so I'll look at my information. I'll say, okay, they don't call it asset number here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it tag number, and I'll align it with the host software, and then I'll fill this up. Where's my home? There it is. And I'll fill it in with, say, a red, right? This way I know it's required for them. And I'll go across here and, go to status. We saw status was red, and I'll go and make that a red. Well, what if it's required for me, right? My organization. Then I'll take that kind of thing, like facility, and I'll put it another but similar color, like orange. And I'll know that this is for me or my organization. And this way, you can make sure that all of the bases are covered. The software has their required fields, but more importantly, you have the information that you want going forward into the new software. And another thing about putting it in Excel is that it's going to make it much easier to work with. Because sure, we could go ahead and go into our software, and we can go into our list view, and we can find the equipment we want. And we have our replace feature to where we could say, okay, if I wanted to replace this with that, maybe I'm changing a certain work order type or a work order status or equipment status, sorry, then I can use our replace. Unfortunately, I chose way too many records and it's thinking about it, but you'll see that we can do that by selecting records and then changing them up here, or we can even do even more with a preview feature. But as handy as that is, the problem is if you're doing all of your data in your database, I highly recommend doing it in here in the Excel file. So why is that? Okay, so you'll notice that I have some equipment under AEM. Well, we're not going to do AEM anymore. Higher up called me up and said, nope, we're never doing it ever again. So the cool thing about this is that I can use the filter feature, right? And I can just search for my AEMs and I can reclassify them however I want. If I don't do the filter feature, right, I can go ahead and sort them using the sort feature, right? Of course, I would have to expand it, but more importantly, I would be able to see the data as a whole. Now, again, you don't need to spend 8, 40, or whatever hours on this if you're in the middle of a conversion process, right? Just take a number of assets a day and work with them. Right here, I have in this particular data sheet about 550 assets. If I take 50 assets a day, it's going to take me roughly a little over 2 weeks to get them done if I take them at 50 assets a day. Now, it's very important that when you work in Excel like this, that you don't come over here and say, well, I want this to be active, so I'm going to type it. Now, the problem with that, sure, it can complete it for me, but the problem people run into is they'll put in a leading space or a trailing space, and the next thing you know, you have another code in your system. Instead of active, it's active space or space active, right? So I always recommend, if you're going to manipulate data like that, always choose a source and just drag it down. That way it maintains that same entry. I've gotten a lot of spreadsheets where it's incredibly dirty because they give all the infusion pumps to one person, all the thermometers to another person, and stuff like that. And they have 17 different versions of active on the spreadsheet. So it's very, very important. If it's going to be a code or if it's going to be a status or a type or something like that, that you absolutely, positively make sure that everything is the same. Conversions are a very important chance to correct bad data. It is probably the most important because at that point you can decide what goes in and what doesn't. I get requests all the time, happened this week. Matthew, can we archive some of our data? Our database is just huge, right? Can we do it 5 years, 3 years, whatever? Another customer said, we want to go live in January because that's when we expect joint commission. And so we want to cut out all this bad data, right, before we go live. And that is the perfect time. But again, you still want to maintain your joins. And what I mean by that is maybe you have a project work order that's been going on for 3 years, right? And that project work order has parts on it, has equipment, stuff like that on it. Unfortunately, if it goes back 3 years, you have to retain those parts and equipment and stuff like that to make sure going forward you're going to have that continued join to those other parts. I've seen a lot of people or a lot of organizations not take data reviews seriously. They're like, Matthew's got this down pat. He's going to be fine. No. I don't know your data. I can look at it. I can make educated assumptions about it. But maybe there's some things that you want to be done with your data. Maybe you want to merge two fields together, or maybe you don't want to include this date or that date, like your purchase date versus your accepted date versus your received date versus anything like that. Maybe you just want to settle with one date, right? If you just give it to me, I'm going to bring in all three. Why? Because it's there. And you may hate to see those other fields filled in. So my advice to you is do the data reviews with your CMMS system that you're going to, hopefully AIMSR. Look at all the different fields that are being filled in. And if you don't like what you see, do it again. A lot of people think that you can't do it again, or it's going to cost a lot of money, stuff like that. We want your data to be clean. And if you go ahead with data that's not clean, you're just going to hate our software simply because it contains bad data. Not because we have bad software, but because you have bad data going forward in that software. You also have a lot of tools to export your data and import your data. Definitely take advantage of those from within the software as well. And again, I can't stress it enough. If you're not happy with the data, a data review, request another. Now I'm going to take a quick break right now, and not a break, but I'm going to take a break for questions. So if anyone out there in the webinar land has a question, go ahead and please submit it through the questions part of the webinar, and we will go ahead and answer them.
Thanks, Matthew. All right, we do have some questions that have come in. The first one is, do we have to clean our data on our own, or can you guys do that?
Yes. I would say that probably the most important part is, since you know your data, you can take an initial stab at cleaning your own data, right? But more importantly, we also, during our conversion processes, assist with that, right? So if you're like, well, I don't know how to make this field go into that field or anything like that, we will take the time, because like I said, during the data reviews part, that we want your data to be clean, because we don't want you to look at our software and hate it for any reason, especially if it's not our fault. So we do take the time. We talk a lot with the customers. At times we'll do a business review. So if you say, well, this is how we normally do it, but is there a better way of doing it? We can recommend that. But yes, absolutely. And if you want to know the different ways, feel free to contact us and we'll let you know. Thanks for the question.
All right, one more that has come in is, what are some other tips you have to help with clean data or data reviews?
Okay, so some of the other tools was, like I explained in our software, is definitely using those export tools and import tools. If the software is worth its weight in salt, you're going to have different ways to clean that data up. So if let's say I'm going to filter for, what should I filter for? Let's go down to type, and I'm going to filter for that, and I'm going to get myself an air handling unit, and I want them all to be active because I don't care about the retired ones. Is it gone? Right. So active. Hit OK. Hit OK. We have all of our active air handling units, and I could go to replace. And if I no longer wanted to call them an air handling unit, but I wanted to call them an air handler, then I could just select everything. I can come over to my preview process and I can, oops, sorry, error. I can say I want to call it an error. If I can type, handler, and then I can preview it and then I can change whatever it was going to be. So definitely use the tools within the software. It is a lot easier than exporting than having to import it. So if it can be done inside, then absolutely. And then if need be, contact your CMMS software and see if they can help you. You know, if I give you an Excel spreadsheet, can you go ahead and import it or run an update script and change everything that way? Thank you for the question.
One more, Matthew. This one is, I have category and subcategory fields. How do I go about merging those?
Absolutely. So in our software system, we only have, let me go back here. If we go into equipment, you'll notice we just have type, right? And a lot of people are coming from places that will have that category, subcategory system lined up. That way it's easiest in Excel. And the way I would do that is I would simply just create another column here and use the Excel tools to merge them. So in this case, I like to use concat, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to concat my category and my subcategory. I want this to be first. I'm going to go ahead and put in a comma and a space. Everybody forgets the space for some reason. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my, oops, not that one, my subcategory. And it's because I have it as text. Let me reformat that. Let's go into general. There we go. And then with this, you can just simply drag it down and all of your stuff is recategorized. I'm not a big fan of deleting these now that you have that. If anything, I would just go ahead and hide those. That way, if you ever have to reference back that source material, you still can. And that's how I would do that. Thanks for the question. Oops.
That's all for right now. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So next, we need to talk about standard operating procedures. And everybody thinks you got to print out a book and keep it on your shelf, stuff like that. But there's also standard operating procedures that you can program into your system. Take out all the work, take out the human element, right? But developing SOPs, it's a great practice. In a lot of places, they're required. So if you have any assets on an AEM, you have to write that up. You have to show why you're doing. You have to show your studies, stuff like that, and put it on a shelf. Yep, same thing. And SOPs do have their place, right? SOPs help you when you're trying to train new people. SOPs also help when you're doing disciplinary cases sometimes, right? And then hopefully you don't always want to be in your position for the rest of your life. So they're good for the next person, help the next guy out, right? But this isn't about SOPs. This is about keeping your data clean. So Matthew, what do you mean SOPs and stuff like that? So if you add an piece of equipment of a certain model, you want certain criteria to come across: risk, PMs, right? Documents, right? Maybe a picture of that particular piece of equipment. And so all of that can be done within your CMMS system, right? And I call it inheritance. And really you want to set inheritance at the highest level, right? So how do we do it? So I'm going to go into a model, scroll down to all my vendors. There we go. And I'm going to go into models here. You'll see I got the 116 and I view it. And there's all sorts of different things I can put at the model. Is it a piece of test equipment? Is it network capable, right? I can set up my risk so I can get my risk score. And then I can also put up my scheduled events. So if I wanted to create a schedule for that event for this, I think it's a AED. I can just create that thing here. And so I'm going to make this a preventative maintenance type. And I'm going to use an AED. I don't have a monthly, so let's make this an annual one. And then I can even assign it to certain people. And depending on your software, you can even assign it to teams, right? So I can create a team here in AIMS-3. And if a very good client of mine in the past had interns test all of the AEDs monthly. And so you could create an intern team, and that way they could run out and choose exactly which ones they wanted to do. So I'm going to go annual AED as my problem. I could set a priority or estimated hours. What's testing a AED do? 15 minutes, right? And we're going to do this. Oh, this is an annual, so it might be even a little bit more. So let's give that a half hour. We're going to do it every year, and I'm going to give them a month to complete it, right? And I can set that at the model level. Now, every time we add that asset or that piece of equipment of that model to our software system, it's going to get that PM. I don't have to worry about somebody making it. It's just going to happen automatically. And that's really what you want to do. And like I said, you want to put it up as high as you possibly can. So for example, you have some really generic assets. And I know this is biomed, but I'm going to go ahead and use an exit light. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new type. I'm going to call this exit light, right? And then let's see, anything else? I'll give it a service department of facilities. Let's save it. And then I can set up my scheduled events here at the type, because if you ever looked at an exit sign, there's no really different in the nothing different in the models, right? And so I could do the same thing here, preventative maintenance. Oops, didn't like it. So preventative maintenance, there we go. Procedure, I'm gonna type exit sign. Don't have any in here. I don't have to put one on there anyways. So I'm gonna make this a monthly exit sign. This one's going to facilities. I'm going to make this monthly, and I'm going to give them a month to get it done. Now, every time oops, I guess I do have to put in procedure. I'll just put in AED annual to occupy the space. So now, every time I go create a new asset of that, so I'm going to put exit sign 2.1 with a type of exit sign, or exit light, I guess. Everything else pretty much filled in. I'm going to hit facility. I have no facilities. There we go. Northwest, hit save. If I hit save there, now it's automatically going to get that scheduled event. So it doesn't have to be put on the model. It doesn't have to be put directly on the piece of equipment. We can put it as high as the equipment type. So inheritance is a great way to stay consistent, right? If it's correct, right? If that PM is correct, it's going to be correct every time you add a piece of equipment of that equipment type or of that particular model. And it's not setting your staff up to fail. If you ask the staff to create a PM every time they create a piece of equipment, they could have a typo, they could have a this, they could have a that. Here, it happens automatically. And overall, it's less work, right? Less work. Another way that we can, or that your software can help, is through automation. Other places you might hear these called snap-ins. Here at AIMS-3, we put it right in the palm of your hands. So with automation, you'll see I got a few here. So let's take a good example. So whenever I remove something from service on a work order, typically I go to the piece of equipment and I retire it, right? So if I'm going to do that all the time, why can't I have it happen automatically? So I'm going to call this one removed from service to retired, right? And so if I'm in equipment and I get a field value change, nope, I'm sorry. If I'm in work order and I get a field value change of failure type from any value 2, removed from service. So the condition being work order, failure type. Where am I? Failure type equals removed from service. I don't want to search all those again. I'll just type it in. Easy peas, lemon squeeze. What I want to have happen is I want it to, the equipment to now be updated. How do I want to update it? That's easy. I want that status to be retired, just like that. And I can go save, and now I have it in my automation. So you're like, that's neat, Matthew, but when I retire an asset or a piece of equipment, if there's any work orders, then I would like all of those work orders to be canceled. So you'll see cancel open work orders for retired equipment, and it's the same things. So if my equipment goes to retired and I have any open work orders, I selected multiple statuses because they could be multiple statuses. I want all of the work orders to update to canceled. So automation is very, very powerful. And here in AIMS 3, we put that tool in your hands because we don't like to do things on the back end. When you do things on the back end and updates happen, whether it's from your software or from an adjoining software, things have a habit of breaking. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to go into my equipment list. Here we go. Oh, no, I don't. I want to look at my PMs. So cardiac EP monitor, let's look at that one. So it's a PM. It has other open work orders in it, right? So what I want to do is I want to fail this bad boy as a removed from service. There we go. Hope I had a problem in there. Going to update it as closed. I did this yesterday and close. Cost center is required. Let's put that in. Responsible center. Let's put that in. Let's try it again. I think it's saved. So from here, we would look at our piece of equipment and it would show, yeah, I think that canceled the active work orders from the retired, kind of may have screwed that up. So I apologize about that. But it's with this automation that you can do multiple things at the same time. And finally, allow your staff to have input. A lot of people say, I can barely get them to do the right thing, but the more you train them, the more you involve them with this stuff, it can help identify shortcomings or if stuff isn't happening. All right, questions, section number 2.
Thanks, Matthew. Our first question in this section looks like SOP workflows. Can you help me with that?
Absolutely. As I mentioned in the previous section, we deal a lot with business reviews, stuff like that. We can help you develop, if not the SOPs, which we definitely can, we can also help you understand inheritance and automation and get them to work for you. And obviously this is done at no additional charge, but may add additional time to your implementation. So it's not done overnight. It may take several meetings, but we will help you get it done. Any others?
Great. Thank you. Yes. Our next question is, do you have a list of, say, the top 10 or top 5 automation examples available?
Sure. Like I showed in our automation setup there, here are a few that people love. So this one with missing equipment, what this one says is if a labor line is created and the labor line response is that it's PM incomplete, not located, it's going to do multiple things. It's going to go to the equipment and it's going to update the status as missing. And then for the work order, it's going to send a notification to the manager that the equipment is now missing, because managers love to know when their stuff is missing. Another good one is with recalls. So if someone says that the status is under recall, right? And this is just saying it's of certain hospitals, then it's going to create a work order. And then it's going to notify the manager that they have a recall for equipment. And then it's going to put to any of the assigned employees that there is a recall on this equipment. So just changing one field alone is it's going to notify a whole bunch of people that this is being recalled. It's going to create a work order. So anything that you think should happen automatic, right? Anything that you think should happen automatic, we can do that. And I did another one to where work order transferred to radiology. So if it's transferred from any other department to radiology, and that work order is of any of the active statuses, then it's going to send a notification to the manager saying a new work order has been transferred to your department. I've worked with a lot of people where they're like, oh, we got a bed again, and facilities does the bed. So they cancel that work order on their side, right? And then they call facilities and they tell them what's what. So in here, if a work order has been transferred to your department through our software, it automatically lets you know. So we can do a whole bunch of different automation. It's just limited by your imagination or ours.
That's helpful, thank you. One more question that's come in is, I noticed list view is missing data. Is there a way I can require my techs to fill in those blank fields?
This happens in every single CMMS system I've worked with, and I think this is like my 6th one. And the way you can do that is by requiring those fields. We talked earlier, if I go into equipment and I go to create a new piece of equipment, we got the red asterisk, stuff like that, right? Well, and in the first section, I said, remember, you have information which is required. And you can go into your system setup, go into required fields. And if I go under equipment and I go under the nameplate, maybe I want to have the type now required. If I save this, go back to my equipment, create a new piece of equipment, now my type is required. And all of this is discussed during the implementation. So again, we'll tell you what we want, but more importantly, I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to ask you what you want as to be required. It all goes through that business review. It all goes through data cleanup. So we know what's important to you, and we make sure that you know what is important to us. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. That's all we have for right now.
All right. So after standard operating procedures, we have to keep a constant review of our data. And we're going back to where I started, where I said a lot of people call me up and they say, I don't have time, right? Everybody says, I don't have time. So the very first thing you can do is review your data on a frequent schedule. And you'll notice as your technicians work within the data that there are certain things that are just going to be, skipped over, or they may make a mistake. And so it's very important that you use your software to identify those shortcomings. So for example, I just created a exit light earlier, right? So if I'm going to clear my filter, and I'm going to create a new filter, and that's going to be anything that's active. So I'm going to go to my status, and I'm going to choose active, maybe in storage, right? And then I'm also going to do, where's my in-service date? Condition date, status date, in-service date, right there. And I'm going to put the starting date as the 19th, and then the last day is the 25th, and hit OK, and hit OK. And there you go. So This is showing me everything that was entered in this week. And you'll see that I've got my exit sign that I just did earlier, and I got a few wheelchairs. Exit sign, missing a lot of data. A lot of data. So this is a great filter to make sure that people are putting things in as they should on a regular basis. You'll notice the wheelchairs, they're missing their condition, not as bad as everything else, but you may notice, hey, I may want to run this over and over and over again. And so I can always save this macro as this week's new equipment, right? I can put in a description if I want, right? But more importantly, because I have that saved as a macro, if I'm working elsewhere in the program and I'm like, I wonder how my equipment's doing, I'm going to go to my list view. Oh, I already had this up, so let me clear that. Let me go away. Darn you, program, for being so efficient. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to my filter. I'm going to look at my macro, this week's new equipment. I'm going to load it, and voila, right? Only took a couple of clicks, but some people might say, you know what, Matthew, that was still way too long. Way too long. We have a widget on our home screen to where if we scroll down, we have our frequently used macros down here, and you'll see at the bottom is this week's new equipment. So here I am working on my, my dashboard, my home screen, whatever, getting things done, right? And so I'm just going to come down here and I'm going to check on my new equipment, and one click and Viola, there it is. So it's a great way of spot checking your work. It's always a good thing. Reports, trust but verify, right? Reports are great. How many times have we found out that they're maybe a little bit off? We have wonderful reports in here. So if I go ahead and I bring in one of our wonderful EOC reports, they didn't put it in here. That or my window's not that big. But you want to be able to go into any report and look at the various data and say, what does this field mean, right? What does this field mean? Is it anything that can't be found and it is still active, or is it anything that can't be found but the PM is closed, stuff like that? Always go back to your CMMS and talk to the report writers and say, what does this particular field mean? And they should be able to tell you that. And then finally, be prepared for what's next. You always want to stay in touch with your regulatory agencies, see what's coming down the pike. Very rarely do they just spring something on you. It's always in the chatter boxes, what's going to happen, right? And so you always want to stay prepared for that. And in order to do that, you really want to have a good communication standard with your CMMS system. We have a wonderful customer service. Our ratings are through the roof, high 90s. You can always call us up and say, how are we going to make this happen in the CMMS? And we can always create a roadmap for you and get that done. Any questions for our third section?
Yes, we do have a few, Matthew. The first one is, can I have a default value for a field that I don't want text to be able to fill in, like a model number, for example?
Right, and the first way we're going to do that is through inheritance, like I had stated before. Another way is in the software, you should have areas to where you can put in default values. So if I go into our setup, you'll see that anytime I put in a new piece of equipment, it automatically comes in as active. The condition automatically comes in as excellent. If I create a work order from scratch, it's all gonna become corrective maintenance and routine, stuff like that. And then I'm sure you guys seen all of this and that's cool, but there's places where you can go the extra measure. So if I go into our purchasing options, we have the ability to enable sequential purchase requests. So you don't have to go, are we on 206 or are we on 207, right? So we can add a prefix. So if it's a purchase request, we can start it with REQ. We can put it with initials of your hospital. We can even add a suffix. So I'm going to go ahead and put -bio, right? Notice we have our last request number already programmed in. So that way, when you go to purchasing and you add a purchasing request, and as all this filled in, yep, and I hit save, it automatically fills in from request, the next number, and our suffix. And speaking of default fields, you notice how everything else was just automatically filled in. So it makes entering that stuff incredibly, incredibly easy. Thanks for the question.
All right, the next one that's come in is, can I be notified real time if new equipment has been added?
Absolutely. And that takes us back to automation. And so if we go back to system setup and we go into automation and I say, okay, if I have a piece of equipment is created, right, and that equipment status equals, you know, a certain status, then we can notify the manager, hey, there's a new piece of equipment. And then they would get, depending on what device they have, right? Because in our system, you can program cell phones, you can program email, you can program just about anything, pagers, if anyone's still carrying around a pager, and you can have them be notified, however, that there is a new piece of equipment. Thanks for the question.
Thank you. Here's one more that has come in. Can I set fields that I want as required?
Absolutely. Covered that a couple of minutes ago, and that was if we go under system setup, you'll see we have required fields. So if I wanted to create one that is required, let's go under nameplate, and now let's make model required. So I'm going to make model name, or no, let's make description required. Let's save that. Going to go back into equipment, and now you'll see that description is now required over here. Now, another question I get a lot is, can I make something not required? And the answer is maybe. If you made it required, then yes, we can unrequire it. However, there are just certain things that the database needs to have equipment. And I've actually been asked before, can we make tag number not required? And I just could not explain that. So there are certain ones that we do have to keep required, but if you want to unrequire one, it would have to be one that your organization already made required and not us. Thank you for the question.
That's all we have for right now.
Alrighty, I want to thank everybody, or no, I do believe I have one more thing. So let's talk about integrations. Integrations is another reason, one, why you should keep clean data, but number two is another reason how to keep clean data. So how do I keep clean data using integrations? RTLS, right? RTLS will automatically update your locations, right? We can use integrations to do document management, like through, I think it's called OneSource, right? We do the same thing with parts. We have a wonderful new feature in our latest version of AIMS 3, and that is whenever you add a material. So I'm going to go ahead and put widget, and I'm going to use 5 of them. They're going to cost about $3.50. So I'm going to save that, but we added a part source button here to where when it goes to part source, it's going to look for that PCB or that material that you just put in there. So eventually part source will come up and it would show you that you have a search of widgets. I don't know why this one doesn't want to work for me now. Notice everything breaks when you're doing your presentation, no matter how many times you've tested it, right? But we have the ability to do all sorts of interfaces from ServiceNow to ECRI. We have a relationship with ECRI that's gone back decades, and they're a wonderful partner to have. And where we really pride ourselves on the integrations is normally when you do an integration, you got to call the CMMS company and say, hey, we need a token to give to the other software, stuff like that. Here, we put it all in your hands, right? So if I wanted to create a new interface, I'm going to go here, and let's say I wanted to interface it with, let's say, Binko Med, right? Notice I already have my API key here. It's already provided, right? And I just hit OK, and it would save it. And you're like, okay, but how do I know what your APIs are? Can you send me that list of APIs? Nope. Why? Because it's already here in our software. I click on documentation, and it brings up our API site, and it gives you every single API we have in the system. And we're loading every single field. It shows you how to get that information, how to post information to that field, how to delete it, so on and so forth. So use integrations to keep your data clean, but also make sure your data is clean for when you use those integrations. Otherwise, you're going to have dirty data in two systems now. So again, we were Phoenix Data Systems. We've been around 35 years. We're known for our reliability and our superior customer service and our innovation. My name is Matthew Binko, Manager of Training. You can contact me using that email right there. We also have our generic email down below, our 800 number, as well as our website. I want to thank everybody for showing up. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any more questions, email me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you ad nauseum about this. I could go for days. So thank you, everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for your time today and for a wonderful presentation.
Thank
I would
you.
like to encourage everyone to visit today's sponsor to learn more about the services that they provide to our industry. Please visit goames.com. A quick reminder that you can obtain your CE certificate by completing the post-webinar survey. The survey will be emailed to you 1 hour after the end of today's webinar. You must complete the survey to receive your 1 CE credit from the ACI, and you'll be able to download your certificate directly from your computer once the survey is submitted. If you have any questions, you can reach us at webinar@mdpublishing.com. We'll be back next week with another webinar. Please visit webinarwednesday.live for more details and for complimentary registration. Thank you all and have a great afternoon.